Hey now, this is Cowboy Jeff at Cowboy Jeff Sucks on Twitter. If you're not listening to the Disgruntled Millennial podcast, then you're probably wearing a fucking burqa.
You've seen that video 100 times. The video of Antifa girl, better known as Moldy Locks, getting clocked in the face like she just done talked back to Ike Turner. Now your head is spinning. You're getting all of these unfamiliar feelings. You want to clock her in the face too. Is it okay to hit a girl if she claims that she's not a girl? Allay your discomforts. Get Obama butt balm. Try our extra strength formula for Antifa snowflakes.
Step aside, you commie-loving baby boomer hippies. It's a new day, and we're no longer gonna take it sitting down. You're listening to the Disgruntled Millennial.
All right, greetings and salutations. This is the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you not live from my safe space down here in North Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. And we are back with a good friend of the show, Elliott, the Fighting Jew Hamiliton. He was one of my very first guests on the show, and we have him back every so often, as the ever-growing number of letters that come after his name is very, very hard to keep track of. It's becoming a veritable alphabet soup. Currently, he's kicking ass and taking names at Boston College Law. But really, who needs any letters after your name when you are a staff writer at the Daily Wire and get to shape the culture with conservative pioneers like Ben Shapiro and Andrew Klavan? Welcome to the show again. It's great to have you back.
Always a pleasure to be back.
So I wanted to talk. I mean, there's so much to talk about. Every time we get together, it seems like there's light years of stuff that goes on, and there's so much to talk about. I wanted to get some Trump stuff out of the way, and then we can get into some of this Antifa cultural stuff that's sort of been taking hold over the last couple weeks. You know. Mm-hmm. So let's just get it all out of the way. You were originally never Trumper, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that, because, you know, I just want to get that out of the way, because, as you know, I was sort of, you know, on the Trump train for a while, you know, even. Yeah, you were. Yeah. Even when it didn't seem like the best thing to do, you know, I mean, from my vantage point, the lesser of two evils was always super duper clear, but I totally understand where the never Trumpers were coming from. So what was your original inclination against Trump, and what changed your mind?
Well, it's interesting. I can't really say that I really changed my mind insofar as I have plenty of criticism left for him. But I think for me, where I kind of saw where Trump was going is that there were some promises that he made that, okay, I would have been okay with it. But given all the flip-flopping that he kind of did during the what do you call it? Primary. Like the Republican primary races, and how he switched the goalposts and a lot of different things, and the way that he carried himself. I've kind of found that a little bit disconcerting as someone who is a lot more set in my principles. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't really nail Trump as someone who would really be out for the interests of conservatism and also for liberty, for the Constitution, etc. Those are the things that I really focused a lot on, and foreign policy as well was something that was a little bit of a wishy-washy topic for him as well. So where I kind of stood was that even though Hillary was terrible, she's awful, there was nothing redeemable about Hillary Clinton by any way, shape, or form. There was something about Trump that made me kind of question whether he would have been, whether he could turn more Hillary if we could be more Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. And that was, I couldn't make a decision. I did not vote for Evan McMuffin. I think he's a fan right now. That's a whole nother story. But the fact is that I just could not see myself voting for either or, because I was worried that if Trump ends up winning, then the alt-right gets their way. And with Steve Bannon on there, who is someone who I cannot stand as an individual, I was worried that if Trump won, then conservatism was going to take a hit for it. And a lot of the concerns that I had then are somewhat still confirmed now with how the Obamacare replacement rolled out, and the question of whether he's going to actually talk about the wall, or if he's going to go on tax reform, and all these other things that I had a feeling that he was going to do. He's even talking about putting tariffs on Canada. Like, are you kidding me? No. But so there are all these things that I knew that if Trump won, this is what we were going to get. But I will say that as soon as Trump won the nomination, there was this sigh of relief that I had. It's like, no Hillary Clinton in the White House. Right. And that was the first thing that went through my mind is Merrick Garland's not getting on the court. Mm-hmm. And it was going to hopefully the Senate was going to do its constitutional duty in advising and consenting whatever the president was going to do for nominating Supreme Court justices, and that we were going to get an originalist. And that actually happened. Neil Gorsuch is someone that I was vehemently in favor of. I was extraordinarily in favor of him. I wrote plenty of articles explaining why I think Gorsuch was an excellent choice for a variety of reasons. And what Trump did with Syria, bombing the airport, even though we don't know what the direction is really going to be, I don't know if it's going to be really regime change like what they did with Iraq. I hope it isn't something as like nearsighted and stupid as that. But the symbolism of saying, "Oh, we're going to drop Tomahawk missiles into Syria after al-Assad launched chemical weapons in rebel territory," that was disgusting, crossed the red line that Obama failed to do almost 4 years ago. And then there's a new sheriff in town. Thank God. We've been needing that for a very long time. And then dropping the mother of all bombs in Afghanistan against Islamic State. I'm sorry, but that's the type of leadership we lacked in the world stage. And I'm happy that Trump is representing a lot of that. And I'm also happy that the one thing that I agree with Bannon on is getting rid of much of the power of the administrative state and bring the power of creating the laws not into the executive branches and to all the executive agencies, but rather bringing it back to Congress, which has an enumerated power to make law. So that's also a good thing. But his trade rhetoric, his trade actions, a lot of that type of nonsense. Obviously, I knew that we were going to get a lot of that, and I'm still very much against it now. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I totally understand the long-term aspirations of the conservative movement, the conservative agenda. Who cares if we win in the short term if conservatism is jeopardized in the long run? I totally understand that point of view. My issue was that even on Trump's worst day, I'm not one of those guys who cares about how he conducts himself. Obama sort of made the way, sort of paved the way for a celebrity president. And unfortunately, this is just sort of the world that we live in. And it's either the diehard crony leftist like Hillary Clinton, or someone who might be a mixed bag, someone who might do some good things, might do some bad things. But the rhetoric, as far as I'm concerned, his pro-American rhetoric is almost worth the price of admission for me. Obama obliterated the morale of this country, obliterated the American spirit, that go get 'em attitude. He said you didn't build that. None of this is yours. None of this belongs to you. The freedom that you have, it doesn't really belong to you. All this globalist talk, and it really, America really took a big blow as far as morale. And just someone coming in there, even if he was bloviating and boisterous and braggadocious, even a guy like that, I think that if he just a shift in rhetoric is sort of what this country needed. It's like a shot to the arm, a kick in the pants, and we really needed that. What do you think?
I think to a certain extent, yes, we did, but I think that could we have had a much better avenue to doing that? Could we have had a better faculty that really bring out that pro-American spirit, absolutely. And I think that if it was anyone but Trump, which is where a lot of conservatives, not every conservative was like that, because there were some people like Jeb Bush or Lindsey Graham that we just had no reason to really stand by, because we understood that they were going to be establishment types. But the fact is that it's interesting when you see a lot of people who are defending Trump right now, and they're kind of in the way that they're going about it is rather ridiculous, is rather interesting. I think the globalist talk I understand where the whole idea of this globalist talk is coming from. It's like this idea of universality. That's a concept that a lot of these people try to juxtapose together, and it's that we do live in a more internationalized and more globalized world. There's no way around that. There's a lot more information coming through this country with everyone else in the world. There's a big amount of information going to and from different people. There's a lot of goods and services that are coming back and forth with all these different nation states, and because of that, it will be, in a lot of ways, a lot of these isolationist types want to believe that the best way that we can move forward is to make sure the globalists who are quote unquote selling us down the river get put in a check, and that we focus more on America first. Well, I completely understand the idea of America first being, we should take care of our own. I completely respect that point of view. But when America first comes at the expense of the fact that the United States is an economic power, it's a moral power, it is a military power, and we are a bevy of importance in this entire community, one way or the other. And whether we leave the United Nations or eventually dismantle it, which I'm all for, and focus and trying to make sure that we kind of still maintain good relations with people. I think that it's important to recognize that there's some amount of we have to be realistic as to how far we end up going with this rhetoric, with a lot of this rhetoric of taking out the quote unquote globalist, because I was called a globalist and I'm an anti-establishment conservative. And the only reason why is because I understand that moving towards free trade is actually better for all societies, not just our own, but for everyone else's societies, rather than being such a protectionist. A tariff is a tax. You cannot go out there and say that we want to see Trump lower taxes while simultaneously saying, we want to increase tariffs and try to play by the rules so that we keep industries within the United States. There are some things that comparative advantage will say the United States is not at the best place to produce certain goods at a rate that will be more beneficial to our society. We are a capital-intensive country more so than we are a labor-intensive country. The labor-intensive ones are the ones working in the sweatshops, making the T-shirts that we wear today. What the United States does is that we have a lot of brain power that goes into building machines and making all these concepts, doing all the stuff that in Silicon Valley is famous for doing. We were a powerhouse when it came to steel. We were a powerhouse when it came to oil. We were a powerhouse when it came to coal. But there are other countries in this world that do a lot of these things far more better than we do. I wouldn't say better, but the returns on investment and the marginal costs are a lot more beneficial to
more
them.
Efficiently.
And they're more efficient for us to buy from them and trade goods that we know that we can produce for cheap rather than others. And that's what benefits all of us. Yes, people lose their jobs. That is an unfortunate reality, because no matter whatever benefits you confer in the economy, there's always going to be a cost. And it's a matter of and oftentimes the cost goes back to the individual. And if you want an individual to have more liberty, then the idea is to try to lower taxes as much as you possibly can so that they can end up using their disposable income into buying into better education, or buying into or buying a car, or buying multiple houses like Bernie Sanders does. There's all these things where you have to put in all these considerations as to our economy. And I don't think that a lot of these pro-Trumpers, these people on the Trump train, a lot of people, you're not one of them. And I was thankful that you had the the wherewithal to understand the lines that you were going to draw. There were lines that you say, I will vote for Trump because I think that this is going to be better for us, but I'm not going to go out there and be rah for his view.
Like Mark Levin says, one of the pom-pom boys, that to me, I don't get, in a way, I like to, a lot of folks, they support Trump, a little bit more exaggeratedly, but in a sort of trollish way. Most people I know understand that he's a mixed bag. And most Trump supporters I know understand that we're going to win some, we're going to lose some with him. And, he's got a sensitive job, of course. It's a delicate situation that we sort of inherited. And we're not always going to get everything that we want all the time. And I think as long as we hold him accountable when we have to, I think it's okay for a lot of these, the pom-pom boys to go out there and be like, so you don't like God Emperor Trump, like a lot of it annoys the hell out of me. But at the same time, I'm like, why, if you're doing it for the purpose of trolling the left, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with using any tactic to troll the left. But if that's what you actually think, if you literally see the guy as a deity, to me, that's dangerous territory. I don't think we should do that. I think we need to keep our head on straight when it comes to the good and when it comes to the bad, Tariffs are a big thing for me because that's just going to get passed down to the consumer. It's just going to make all of our products more expensive. At the end of the day, the people at the top, the businesses, they have their bottom line, and they meet their bottom line by passing the savings on to the consumer or lack thereof. But at what point does it come? At what point do we throw the baby out with the bathwater? And I'm just not sure we've even remotely come close to reaching that point. Like you said, Neil Gorsuch. I mean, again, that alone is worth the price of admission. Barring any major catastrophes, it's almost like, we sort of won already. We just need to, keep his feet, we need to hold his feet to the fire, and we need to understand that the guy's not a deity. He's not the second coming. He's a human being. He puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us, and we shouldn't deify the guy.
And that is correct, because as a matter of, and this actually goes perfectly with the segue that we were talking about earlier, and what else we wanted to talk about was that, unfortunately, having this great deal of idolatry to the man is a leftist ideal, because the left tends to believe in these utopian idols. They bow down to intersectionality like it's a religion. They bow down to like Michel Foucault, they bow down to Karl Marx, they bow down to Jean-Paul Sartre. They're all these guys that the left will just go all out for. How willing would the left be willing to put out for their nonsensical views? They're willing to kill the First Amendment for that, for God's sake. It's one of those stupid things where if we start believing in these, if we start taking these people that the left loves so much as idols, and then the alt-right does that for Trump, then there's really no difference in all that. It's just it's tribalism, and tribalism, it goes completely against individualism, because the idea of the individual is that you are judged based on your own character. Your individuality and your character means more to you, and what you put out as an individual into this economy, into society, is worth more than what your skin color is. It's more than what your religion is. It's more than what your ethnicity is. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, and if you divide everybody into tribes, then all of a sudden, your ability to think, the ability to think on your own, the ability to articulate thoughts, the ability that you have to separate yourself as an individual goes out. There's no room left for individualism when you are part of a tribe. And this tribalism that comes from both sides, both of the extremes, actually destroys the very foundations of this nation that you and I have been fighting for years. And the irony is that the tribalists on the far right claim that they care a lot about ideas about the First Amendment. I heard some individuals say Muslims are not protected under the First Amendment. That is asinine.
Yeah.
Just because we have our own issues with radical Islam and some of the practices that real textualist practitioners of Islam use, like female genital mutilation and the like, just because we don't like some of those does not mean that we're going to have a blanket ban on Muslims for the sake of being Muslims. That's not what Trump did with the executive order. Mm-mm. That is not what we have been advocating in any way, shape, or form. And it's completely contrary to the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. It goes against the freedom to practice religion. There's a lot of things that people are saying in the name of quote-unquote freedom and liberty that is completely contradictory to all of that. It's a categorical opposite of all of that. And it's up to us as individuals in the conservative movement to smack the left when they do their consistent idiocy, and then do the same the far right does something stupid.
Yeah, on my Facebook, I get a lot of folks, a lot of different kinds of folks, people who are nice, some people who are jerks, a lot of racists out there. And when I get that, I smack it down right away. I'm like, excuse me, I don't know where you think you are, but this is not that kind of site, and that's not what we support. I put a video out of, and like going back to what you were saying about First Amendment not applying to Muslims, there's, it gets sort of wishy-washy when some of these Muslims, they want to sort of, there's this girl that wants to sue the Navy because they're forcing her to take off her hijab and wear a Navy uniform, so she wants to sue on grounds of protection under the First Amendment. And those are the sort of circumstances that I think are up for debate. Me personally, I think that she should take off the hijab and wear, that doesn't violate her First Amendment rights. You when you go into the armed services, you sort of have to give up your own individualism, and that's sort of part of the game. And so when it comes to things like that, I think there are debates to be had. But you're absolutely right. We have to smack it down when it comes even on our side, and in a way, we actually really have to be okay with that, because these people jeopardize freedom and liberty just as much as the other people do. It's just in a much different way. And, I think that's a really, really important thing to think about. Now, you wrote an article recently about an NYU professor. I wanted to segue into this Antifa stuff, but, now that we're sort of talking about the First Amendment, this is sort of where I love the nitty gritty of this, intersectional feminism meets anti-fascism, which is sort of just one thing leading to another, if you ask me. Tell me a little bit about this article that you wrote. An NYU professor sort of went out there proposing that in order to protect free speech, we have to squelch and squash free speech.
So I wrote this today, and this is an article, and this is, so just as Brett said, you guys, I write for the Daily Wire, work for Ben Shapiro. It's a part-time job along with me being a first-year law student. So this professor, he's an English professor. He's the vice provost of faculty and diversity and inclusion, something leftist. It's a made up job. Yeah, just one of those fillers that gives the government more reason to pin massive loans on students to get a subpar leftist education. But problem is that this guy ended up writing an article essentially saying that that the definition of free speech has changed and over a generation. So starting in the 80s and the 90s, when conversations about the Shoah, the Holocaust, started becoming more of the mainstream, that there were these individuals who, for their completely disgusting reasons, would oftentimes reject the idea that the Holocaust ever happened. And from there, the idea in this guy's thesis was that from that moment, there was this movement to try to move the conversation about very tricky topics, a lot of them being like racism or illegal immigration or the Holocaust or general suffering. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of like the beginnings of intersectional theory, that instead of having conversations based off rational debate and the facts and try to figure out what's the best way to move forward in terms of solving big problems, there was a shift on people's experiences, their traumatic experiences, and trying to put that on more of a pedestal, and then talking about issues of fact, of issues of law, things that are important when it comes to really serious and difficult debates. And this guy was talking about we have an entire generation, aka the millennials, that have been growing up with this idea that free speech and the idea of having open dialogue has to be more centered on experiences and feelings, oftentimes more so than issues of law and issues of fact. And what he said was that the kids who are on these college campuses, whether it's Auburn University, UC Berkeley, or Middlebury College, though all that tried shutting down Richard Spencer, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Charles Murray, respectively, he argued that those kids were the true defenders of free speech because in his view, these kids are trying to ensure that real dialogue, quote unquote, is being had from an emotional level, and that sometimes there are individuals that you cannot talk to and cannot rationalize, and college campuses should not, and in his view, cannot allow individuals that might offend the sensibilities of the marginalized, because, and this is the real condescending, like the low bigotry of low expectations. And he said that people are essentially said, not verbatim, but he implied that marginalized communities are incapable of having rational conversations on fact and on law on these because they focus so much on emotions. And I ripped that to shreds. I said, this is not a defense of free speech. This is a defense of liberal fascism.
Right. Yeah, it's a defense of emotionalism too. Why, to go out there and pretend like you care about free speech and it sort of puts one of our most sacred rights in the hands of these college snowflakes who, look, I mean, teenagers, they're like crazy people, okay? They're just naturally sort of like crazy. So,
we were teenagers once. We get it.
What?
We get it. We were teenagers once.
Yeah, I get it. It's, you want to, you want to go out and you want to do good in the world and you want to make the world a better place. And if someone's shoving this down your throat, that the only way to make the world a better place is to shut these people up, and you equate someone saying, for example, talking about black on black crime, and you equate that to yelling fire in a crowded theater or making some sort of bomb threat or something like that, since you're triggering people, it's like, if you're going to base if you're going to base it all on how they feel about it, you're opening up a can of worms that's not going to close very easily. You're opening up a can of worms that ultimately is going to lead to basically the lowest common denominator of people deciding what everyone else gets to say and what they can't say.
That's correct, and it's disgusting. I mean, it's just where has our generation really gone other than down? Because at this point, you've probably seen this just as much as I have, but you see individuals who are so capable of defending such asinine, illiberal, regressive views when it comes to free speech and free press. And I'm just gonna talk a little bit about the whole fake news argument. Is that a lot of people want to argue, especially on the left, that any conservative viewpoint is fake news because that doesn't fit their framework. It's like, if Obama was actually an asshole on a couple of different things, then that's not true. Obama was the greatest person ever. Right. He was the greatest president that's ever happened. No, we're not going to allow any of this. And this is fake news. Right. No, you just like our opinion, and you just need to shut the hell up because the freedom of the press and the freedom of speech trump your feelings. Done.
Right.
It's like, and we have an entire generation of little snowflakes who think that they know better, and they think that they have much better morality than people who've got decades more life experience than we do, and say that we have a right to shut you up because we think that you are X, Y, and Z. You are a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe. There's no room for debate. There's no room for intellectual inquiry. It is I'm going to spew infantile, sophomoric nonsense for the sake of social justice.
Right. Well, the left has been crying wolf for so many years about racist, bigot, sexist, homophobe, and they've been they keep on changing the language. They keep on changing the vernacular. First it's black, then it's African American, then it's person of color, and then we keep on adding to the string of letters with LGBTQAIFF CIOF We keep on adding to the list, and they expect you to understand all this stuff. And one of the things about the left is that although they can't stand and they hate religion, they look at their beliefs as sort of these godlike, they look at their beliefs as a religion. But one of the problems, and this is where intersectional feminism comes in, one of the problems is when you particleize people so much, people on your own side, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to be a situation where people can't get together, groups that don't like each other, they're not supposed to like each other. Intersectional feminism has light-skinned siblings getting pissed off at their darker-skinned siblings getting pissed off at their lighter-skinned siblings because they have light-skin privilege. So what they had to do in order to sort of coalesce and organize themselves again, these groups that really can't, they hate us, but they can't stand each other either. What I think is that intersectional feminism had to coalesce these disparate groups, and they sort of started forming these Antifa type groups. This is why you have Black Lives Matter, CARE, the Muslim Brotherhood, the feminists, the LGBT community, the whole kit and caboodle. You have them sort of coalescing into these organizations that have one common goal: to end Western civilization, white privilege, and cis white male privilege and stuff like that. So one of the things that's happened recently, obviously, is Antifa has been gaining a lot of traction. Again, they changed the language a little bit. We haven't heard anything really about Black Lives Matter in the last couple weeks. We haven't heard that much about feminism in the last couple weeks. It's all about Antifa, and this is basically where all these leftist groups, these disparate groups, where they've sort of come together with a common goal of obliterating Western civilization. And it's a little bit scary to me because the rhetoric is escalating, the tactics are escalating, and they're a lot more brazen. They have the vigor of these youngsters in college who, they think they're fighting Nazis. You know what I'm saying? They think they're doing God's work, or whatever, their Marxist work, whatever it is. And to me, it's a little bit scary. What do you make of all this?
1936 called Antifa. They want their brown shirts back. Sorry, right. But you can't be anti-fascist while acting like a bunch of damn fascists. If you're going to go out there and try to rationalizing punching people because you think they're Nazis, or punching, or if you consider ever wanting to punch me because I don't agree with your viewpoint, expect me to break your damn trachea. I'm sorry. There's no excuse for wanting to assault and batter another individual simply because you disagree with them. Just because someone is wearing a MAGA hat does not mean that they are a white supremacist. That just because somebody believes that we have a fundamental constitutional right to keep and bear arms, that does not mean that we believe that people should be shooting kids in a school. Just right. Because we believe that we come from a Judeo-Christian society, and that a lot of us should uphold a lot of that morality, does not mean that we hate women, that we hate gays, etc. That is not the logic that these kids should be living by. But unfortunately, and I think a lot of this the onus on this goes to the parents and it goes to the professors at these schools, because these kids are being brainwashed into such nonsense that they honestly, like you said, they honestly believe that they're fighting Nazis. If they really knew what a Nazi was and what the Nazis ended up doing, they would look themselves in the mirror and say, "Welp, I just did exactly that." And right. That's not to say that these kids are inherently genocidal. It's not to say that these kids want to throw you and me into a gas chamber. It's that the idea that you despise another group of people so much that you rationalize breaking the law and harming their right to life, liberty, and property simply because you think you have a much better sense of morality, you're a better human being than them. That is functionally and definitionally no different from what the Nazis believed. And I argued with a former BuzzFeed writer on this, and she didn't get it. And the worst part about it was she was Jewish. Right. I don't know where our people have come, especially the ones in If Not Now, to rationalize this nonsense that opposing Israel or opposing Trump or opposing any of these things will somehow make you better Jews. And they will use their Judaism in order to justify going up against Trump. They will use their Judaism to go up against Israel and the false occupation. It's one of those weird, warped mindsets that these kids have learned in college, and I also blame J Street for specifically, If Not Now.
Disgusting. That
there are people in our society, our age, who think it is justifiable to punch people. It is nuts. There is no excuse for that. It's criminal. It's completely criminal behavior. And I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of Trump supporters ended up responding to them getting punched by Antifa people and just stomping on their throats. That's self-defense. Deal with it.
Absolutely. And one of the things I like to say is that, the Trump supporters have been really tame, if you ask me. For all this talk about white supremacy and the crazy, outback podunk Christian good old boys who just love their guns and their Bibles and they just want to oppress everybody and kill all the homosexuals, they really sort of admit to them, they have to admit to themselves that the reaction has been so tame. What white supremacist society worth its salt would allow these organizations to exist and to protest and to go out and riot like that? And to the point that you made about a lot of these kids not being genocidal, I don't know. I'm beginning to doubt that. A lot of these people, they do think that they think that we're no good, that we need to get got, and they're going to do. And like I was saying, the rhetoric is escalating. The actions are escalating. The lengths to which they are going to make their point is just getting more and more drastic with the masks and the bottles. They're throwing bricks at people. You have to have a really kind of warped attitude to think that it's just okay first of all, to think that 50% of all of America, how many Nazis were there actually in Germany? We're talking 150 million Americans plus are Nazis, are genocidal Nazis. It doesn't make any sense, first of all. But if you do think that, and that all Nazis, and you accept the fact that all Nazis need to die, well, it's really not a far cry from genocide. 150 million Americans who voted for Trump, 150 million Americans didn't vote for Trump, but a lot of Americans do support Trump. Could you imagine if these Antifa people had their way and actually went out and punched one of them punched or killed a Nazi? I mean,
remember that these are the same idiots who hate the Second Amendment and love gun control. So, there is some irony to all of this because, well, except for the aspects that, well, the Nazis like gun control too, because then in their view, they are the ones who had all the guns and they got to use them. However, and of course, that a lot of these Antifa punks, and this was proven especially insofar as what happened with Berkeley and Milo Yiannopoulos, that a lot of these Antifa punks are just living in their mother's basement. Like 70% of them are just living in their mother's basement in Berkeley and Oakland, wherever the hell they are, whatever like scumbag like infested gutter they live in. It's like I have no idea where they're going. I have no idea where these people come from. I mean, ideologically, I think we do, but these people just are coming from all walks of life, all under the same banner. It's like, and yes, I can understand why you believe that they are genocidal, because when you say that you're genocidal, it's more than just the act of it. It's also the belief that a lot of these people need to die. But for me at least, I just haven't seen as much of the Antifa rhetoric of killing them rather than just punching them. But even then, a crime is a crime, and in criminal law, if you have the actus rea and you have the mens rea, then you can get your ass charged with a crime. And when you have that record, it doesn't make it anything easier for you. And ironically, Black Lives Matter wants to make the criminal justice system much simpler so that less people who act irrationally or criminally get screwed over. Like there's a lot of weird dichotomies with a lot of that, and they may think that it's not a dichotomy, but for me, I just say you want life to be better for people. You don't want more people. You don't want the incarceration rate to be more ridiculous than it is right now, but you're going to encourage assault and battery on other people.
Right.
Are you out of your damn mind?
Right. You know, a lot of it is these privileged kids who are going to college. I mean, if you're going to college and you're out there fighting fascism, it's like I was saying, it's like a white supremacy society worth its salt would never let anything like this take hold. One of the things I also noticed, I read it on Reddit, that I read a thread there that these Antifa kids, they're actually, ironically speaking, just like you said, they're trying to get armed now. They're taking gun classes and they're buying bigger and badder weapons. Look, you know, up until now, the Trump supporters have just been, all right, you pesky, you know, kids, you know, get away from us. Now it's a little bit more real. People are getting punched in the face for absolutely no reason. People are getting, you know, injured, severely injured. And, you know, this guy had this brick thrown at his head, the bike lock attacker, a philosophy ethics professor. I mean, it's just getting so out of hand that it's almost like, do you see a civil war coming in the near future?
I mean, I'm not going to be a prognosticator because most of the time the prognosticators often get it wrong. I mean, I think like the prognosticator who ended up saying, Britain wasn't going to leave the EU. There was no way around that. They ended up having a good slice of humble pie shoved down their throat. And a lot of people was like, oh, Hillary had like a 99% chance of winning the election. They definitely had to eat a big slice of humble pie on that one too. So I'm not going to go out there and say yes, no, maybe so. But I do think that the rhetoric in here has been problematic in a lot of ways. And even in my con law class, we've been focusing on due process for a very long time. And part of the interesting conversations that we were having was that due process emerged and it changed over time in a lot of ways. In some ways it was for very good reason. In other cases it's rather problematic, at least from the originalist standpoint, from where I stand. But the idea about individuals having a right to life, liberty, and property without due process of law and within equal protection of the law, those are things that started evolving over time because people's attitudes changed, especially after the Civil War ended. The Civil War was more than just it was in a lot of people's views, especially from a lawyer's perspective, constitutional lawyer's perspective. The Civil War was a long-standing legal argument. Mm-hmm. Think about it, because in that case, it's like who is a person? What represents a person?
Right.
Chief Justice Taney ended up saying in Dred Scott that Dred Scott was not a person and he had no right to process. And he had to live with that for the rest of his life. And then Civil War breaks out, Union wins, and then all of a sudden any individual born within the United States of America is a citizen, and they have due process rights, and then the voting rights, etc. There's all of these things that have changed over time when it comes to the understanding of who we are as people, and it all came out of divisions. Right. And a lot of the worst things that happened to our country actually helped us become better. And right now, where I think we stand is that we are in one of those moments in our society. It kind of, I wouldn't say it's like the Civil War. It's not a Civil War type thing. Right. But I definitely see it as one of those generational "who are we" moments. Right. And then the 1960s, especially 1968, had one of those moments. There were issues around in the early 90s when we were talking about issues of abortion. There were conversations about that as well. Mm-hmm. And then during the Iraq War, there was this period of time we were trying to figure out who we are as a nation, where we want to be. And I think right now where we stand is that we're just in a very tumultuous time where we are just so divisive on everything, and I really mean everything. Yeah. That who we become and who we are supposed to represent is going to carry with us for the rest of our lives. And it's going to be a matter of which extreme is going to cross the line first. And whatever extreme crosses the line first is the one that's going to suffer the most. And at the rate that things are going, the left is in real danger. Mm-hmm. Because the left had a referendum against them in this last election. We kept the Senate, we kept the House of Representatives, we won the presidency. Mm-hmm. And the left lost. The left lost everything, and because the left lost everything after thinking that they gained so much in 8 years of Obama, that they think that for them it's now or never that they end up fighting back. They want to make sure that the arguments that they've been having, they were trying to create for 8 years, can still remain.
Right.
This is the moment where we have to go out there and put the exclamation point on on Trump's victory and say, "You guys are done. The left is done." But the Democrat and which is why I've been so pissed at Paul Ryan and the Republicans in Congress, not the Freedom Caucus, but the establishment ones, because this is a time in which we could put the exclamation point on there, and they are shooting themselves in the foot because for some reason, like you were saying, we are too timid. We want to play nice. We want to be more philosophical. We want to be more logical. We want to be less emotional.
Right.
And unfortunately, where the alt-right kind of got it, I hate saying this, where they kind of got it right was that they responded to emotion with emotion and showed how both sides were ridiculous on them. And then when the right showed its emotional side, and a lot of people kind of identify with it, for us, we've been responding to it somewhat passionately and a little bit emotionally, but we kept principles.
Right. But
some people went to the emotions, and now everyone's going ballistic.
It's like kill Antifa. Yeah,
No, you don't go that far.
Listen. I at the same time, I brainstorm about how this is going to play out, all the different scenarios with this whole Antifa movement, and I rack my brain, because what it always comes down to is either we are going to let this sort of escalate and let this continue, because look, if they don't get what they want, they're not going to stop, and the small minority with the big loud voices, they could cause a lot of problems for the other moderates, some of the Democrats who might be maybe coming over. The Antifa movement, I think, has given people a lot of bad taste in their mouth, especially some of my liberal friends who are just like, wow, this is not what we signed on for. This is not what I signed on for. But at the same time, like I was saying, the rhetoric is escalating, the actions are escalating, and at a certain point, it is going to turn bloody. And in what way should we? I've been trying to figure out, how are we supposed to react to this? I just got invited to one of these Antifa anti-Antifa protests or rallies. And my mom she's like, "Oh, but you're going to get hurt." I'm like, well, a lot of people got hurt to defend our rights, but is the juice worth the squeeze in this case? When do we actually put down our pencils and papers and pick up our weapons and decide what are we supposed to, like, they're leaving us with no other choice other than to react in the same way that they are acting towards us. And it's almost like if we just keep on letting them do it, we're not going to, look, personally, I think they had to put on all these masks just so that they could reveal themselves to us. Ironically speaking, they put on these masks so they can reveal themselves to us as the fascists that they actually are. And
they're cowards.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to even go far. I'm not even going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They're cowards.
Right.
These people hide their faces in there because they don't want to deal with the possibility of having have them being photographed for the rest of eternity, showing that they were part of a movement that actually was proactive in harming people. It is a weird dichotomy, and it's just a sickness in their head that they feel that they want to do good. They want to do what is moral and just, but they don't want to put a face to themselves on it. It is the ultimate form of cowardice
and collectivism too. You know,
Well,
just a sea of black faces. They dress just like ISIS. You know, they're setting up these little camps where on Reddit. The description sounded just like an ISIS training camp, and the tactics are just like ISIS training camp. And like I was saying, it's just going to keep on escalating until someone gets really, really hurt. At what point do we stop them dead in their tracks and make a preemptive strike, sort of, in the 6 Day War? In the vein of the 6 Day War, when do we stop and we make a preemptive attack on some of these people? Whether, because look, unless President Trump comes out and identifies these people as a terrorist group, you're going to have these Trump supporters going out there and defending themselves. People like Based Stickman, the guy who now I'm thinking this guy's a freaking hero. He shows up with his American flag shield. He's like a real life vigilante. And, unfortunately, I'm someone who believes in the rule of law. But when the law fails these people, when the law fails us, this guy has to defend himself. The mayor of Berkeley, who is an actual supporter of Antifa, called off the cops and basically declared open season on these Trump supporters. Now, whether you agree with Richard Spencer or this guy Nathan Domingo, the guy who punched Antifa girl in the face, whether you agree with them or not, they still have a right to free speech. They weren't out there looking for a fight, but they were willing to deliver one when it came to them. And when the cops declared open season on Trump supporters, I just don't see this ending well in any way, unless we see some leadership from our president and from our government.
I agree. And I think in this circumstance, when one of the enumerated clauses in our Constitution for Article 2 is that the president has to take care of the law, and he's been doing a good job of that when it comes to immigration. I'm happy at this point that he is taking the whole immigration issue seriously, because we hadn't done that for 8 years. But when it comes to things like Antifa, when it comes to individuals who are abusing their right to peaceable assembly, to commit assault and battery on people and punching them, throwing bricks, etc., then there is a time where you have to say that the cops need to uphold the law. The governors need to put in the National Guard the same way that they did in Ferguson when the Ferguson riots went ballistic. There are times where it is necessary that the people are defended in the way that we do need to be able to do that, and and it needs to be done. It's having leadership within our localities, within our states, and from the federal government saying that none of this will be acceptable. And part of that is just appealing to those authorities and saying, "What the hell?" I thought my right should be the same as theirs to peaceably assemble and to express my viewpoint. Why do I have to deal with getting punched in the face? Why are these people not getting stopped? Why isn't there being, if these kids are clear, if you're correct, and I haven't seen the evidence myself, that there are these Antifa kids who are planning on arming themselves, then damn it, the government needs to get involved in this, because this is insane.
Right. No, it's absolutely insane. And I just don't see it ending well for the left either. I don't see it ending well for leftists. First of all, yes, the left is done. The left is donezo. But at the same time, the people with the guns, the people with the arsenal, the people who uphold the Second Amendment, they are the ones who have the moderate reaction. They are the ones who are able to sort of moderate their reaction. And when that goes out the window, it is going to be a bloodbath, and not for conservatives, not for the people with the guns. And this is, again, goes back to, in what white supremacist society worth its salt would we sit here and temper our message and be cool and calm and collected when it comes to reacting to people who are hell-bent on taking away your personal liberties? Okay, once that line is crossed, once the conservatives or whoever it is that is the defenders of free speech, once they believe that the line has been crossed, this could de-escalate very, very quickly, and it won't be good for the liberals. And I think that to get the certain Hollywood effect, like the Antifa girl, she's like this genderqueer anal queen by day, Antifa queen by night. She shows up like, super genderqueer and gender fluid, and then she gets punched in the face and all of a sudden comes to terms with her femininity. She goes on GoFundMe and says, "Oh, this poor, innocent, young, defenseless, 95-pound girl was punched in the face by a big bad bully white supremacist jerk off." They're going to come to terms with their weaknesses once they cross the line and wake the sleeping beast. That will ultimately be the literal end of a lot of these people. Literally the end, not just the spiritual end of the left, as if there is such a thing as a spiritual left.
Intersectionality makes people stupid, and it's also a religion to the left. So yeah. I think you're on the right track.
Right, but the question is, just the fact that things have gone down the way they have negates the entire aspect of this white supremacist business, white privilege, white guilt, Western guilt. It just negates the entire fact of it. And once they cross the line, they're not going to see how long we've been tolerating this for. They're not going to see how long we've been accepting that we are going to be looked upon with more scrutiny than they are, that they get to throw the first punch and we don't get to react. But when we do react, they are going to go out there and try to get this Hollywood effect where, you see, we knew they were white supremacists the whole time. We knew they were violent, awful, terrible people the whole time. You poke and poke and poke and prod, and then you get the reaction that you want. You're going to have a bad time. You're going to have a bad time.
I find it so ironic that Palestinian Arab terrorist tactics are being used by American leftists. I mean, it's just one of those weird things where you see, like you said, Pallywood's being one of them. It's like punch first, and then when someone punches back, say how much of a bully they are. Like, right. No, like Ben Shapiro wrote an entire book on that.
Right.
But it's like one of those weird things where the ideas and the tactics used by genocidal terrorists are being co-opted by leftists in order to make them seem like they are the more morally superior ones. And then you and I are right here, like knocking on people's rationality doors, like, "Hello, is anyone there?" Like, we've seen this before.
Right.
I'm talking about it all day, every day. I mean, what are you talking about, people?
Right. Yeah. And when everything is fascist, here's the thing. They're the ones that look like the big black blob, but that's how they see all of us. And it's really like crazy how they are trying to I mean, it's like the ultimate case of projection. Social justice warriors always project. And it's true. And, I just don't see this ending well. I really want it to end well. I got really, really excited when Donald Trump won. That night I had a little bottle of something. I was sipping on some Grand Marnier, and I was just like, on the edge of my seat, like, this is going to be crazy. Whatever happens next, this is going to be nuts. And, we have this great opportunity to solve some of these problems, and we just need to have, and this is one of the things I'll give to them. They have the fortitude to just do it and just to keep on going. And that is one of the things that we lack as conservatives, I think, in general, is that we don't have the fortitude to react to them knowing that we are in the right. They know they're right. Even though we know they're wrong, they know they're right. So many of us are tepid about going out there and being right and claiming the virtue of understanding objective reality, for starters,
I think you're wrong in this one. I think that at this point I think it has changed. I think the tide has turned, because you have individuals like Christina Hoff Sommers, and you have Dave Rubin, you have Ben Shapiro, I'm not going to say Milo, because Milo went down the deep end a little bit. But there are all these individuals who have, like you and I too, who we know where our values lie. We understand that morally speaking, we are in the right. We also know factually speaking, we're in the right. Right. And we're doing everything possible, given all the busy stuff that we do, to make it a point that yes, we have lives outside of getting involved into this political like cage match, but still we know what we're doing, we know what we're talking about, we know that we're right, and we're hitting them, punching the left twice as hard. Well, it's like one of those things where I think the circumstances of the last couple of years, especially when you and I started becoming more conservative after like Islamic State started rising in Iraq and Syria, after Operation Protective Edge, and after that summer was the pinnacle for people like you and I who realized that everything was actually going to hell, and the only way we were going to fight back was that we do exactly what the left has been doing, use the tools of the left and use it against them. And I think a lot of people have identified with that, and it's actually making people more effective in protecting our values and protecting our views than it has been in decades, because a lot of conservatives were timid. We're way too timid to share their points of view in fear of being ostracized. Mm-hmm. To hell with being ostracized, and rather be with the in crowd who actually has half a brain cell to put together with another half a brain cell, and can actually talk about issues like you and I do. We don't always agree on stuff. We disagreed on where on whether we're going to vote on Trump or not. Right. But you and I are on the same page when it comes to we have values that we have to defend. We have a country to defend. Right. There's a lot of stuff that we will absolutely agree on, and we know that we're correct, and that's why you and I are right here talking right now. Right. Yeah. And I think that is picking up with a lot of people, and we just need to keep doing what we've been doing, because it's going to inspire more people to do exactly what we're doing. Right.
Yeah, it's okay to teeter around the edges and be different in certain cases, but when your fundamental values are the same, and when your fundamental values are in line, there's room for a little bit of give and take. One of the things I noticed about your article, and I think this is a really good point for for the way conservatives can sort of handle a lot of this going forward. And one of the things I've also noticed in the online community, the meme community, we are so much better at trolling them than they are at us. Even the NYU professor who sort of used the word snowflake as a little bit tongue in cheek, it just didn't come across well. He's like trying to troll conservatives, because conservatives are going around calling all the lefties precious snowflakes. He tried to use it in a way that sort of made it, he tried to reverse the meaning of the word and say it like we did with deplorable. A lot of Facebook pages that have thousands and thousands and thousands of people, proud deplorables, you know what I mean? We turned that on its head. This guy tried to take snowflake and sort of reappropriate, tried to take it back. Didn't even remotely work. I think that's something that we should all sort of keep in mind when we're going about this, that we could do a lot in the intellectual sphere just by sort of taking their weapons and turning them back around on us, since we know that they're basically incapable of doing the same thing. It just doesn't ever work, They
are so unoriginal with their arguments. They're so unoriginal. It's like, racist, sexist, being horrible. Oh my goodness gracious, you guys are terrible people. Shut the hell up, you stupid idiot. What do you even know in this world? Yeah. It's funny because I ended up visiting the Daily Wire offices in Los Angeles when Michael Knowles' book started becoming big. And I was sitting with Michael and I just said, did you expect that this was going to happen? Do you really think that your damn blank book was going to be as much of a hit there? I was there when it hit number one on Amazon, and then I went on to Twitter right after Shabbos, and I saw that Trump him and give him a free endorsement. I said, what a time to be alive, because we are smarter than they are. Right. We know how to make them look stupid, because they say something, do something, and they step on a rake, and then they step on another rake. There's that gif going around from The Simpsons of the guy who just turns one way, walks on a rake, and then turns the other way, hits another rake. That's the left. There's no other way to describe it.
That book is so funny. I mean, I did I did an audiobook version. I don't know if you saw. Oh, you have one?
Yes, I do. Open it. You're welcome, Michael. Michael knows everything.
I love
history.
I love how Andrew Klavan is like, us, we who actually write words in our books.
It's funny 'cause I have a bunch of Klavan books with me as well. They're all fantastic. It's just really funny how like the bibliography was the only thing that had words in it. And here's examples of books that were in there. Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, Wilson. The Ku Klux Klan, A History of Racism and Violence. Robert C. Byrd, Child of the Appalachian Cornfields. There's what other things did they end up mentioning in here? Senatorial Privilege, the Chappaquiddick cover-up, Kennedy. The Dred Scott Case, Its Significance in American Law and Politics. I think there's one on. Hold up. I think my favorite. My favorite one. Eugenics and Other Evils. That was harsh.
These guys.
Wait. There's another one that was even worse. Gosh. Wait. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna figure out where it is. Oh, boss, Richard J. Daley of Chicago. Like, ouch. That's critical history and the People versus the Democratic Party, and there was Margaret Sanger.
Right. Let's see the book one more time. My brother bought me a copy, but it hasn't arrived yet. Reasons to Vote Democrats, an empty book.
It's an empty book. It's the smartest thing that's come out in a very long time. And if it doesn't become a New York Times bestseller, I'm sure Michael is going to be pissed. Michael, welcome again. I just bought you more books.
That's so funny, and the guy bought a house from it too. The guy paid for his, got a mortgage paid off because he was able to troll the left so effectively. Man, I wish he has Michael Phelps status. If trolling the left were a competitive sport, he would be like a gold medal Olympian. Okay, it's really.
I'll put it this way: Michael Knowles, I think. Michael Knowles got money from Ben because he bet on the election, because apparently Ben ignored data. He used that money to buy a ring to propose to his girlfriend, and now he's using the money royalties from the joke book to pay a down payment on a house. What the hell, Michael Knowles?
That's why they call him the cultural correspondent. He's got his thumb on the pulse of the culture and just knows what to do. That is some really, really smart stuff. It's like one of those things where it's like, damn it, why did I think of that? It's like, I should have thought of that. That could have been my book.
The next joke was that around that same time I was talking to some of the Daily Wire guys, and they said that, you know what, I should do something similar, like as a sequel to that. I should say The History of Palestine.
Right.
And it'll still be a blank of a book.
Oh my God, that's freaking genius, man. Before we go, tell me a little bit about your experiences over at the Daily Wire, man. I can't say I'm not a little bit envious of your of all the stuff that's going on. I'm super duper proud of you, man. It's not like jealousy or anything. It's like, wow, I want to I feel like sort of, a couple, we've been doing a bunch of shows, and I feel like we sort of have been kind of fighting this fight together, in tandem.
It's come to think of it, it's been almost 2 years, almost 3 years or 2 years to the, I think it's almost 2 years to the day that it was our first show with Ellie Rudy, who's doing fine, by the way. I talked to her not too long ago. She's a complete and utter sweetheart.
Awesome.
But it's interesting because working for someone like Ben, a lot of people don't realize this. He's actually one of the most selfless individuals you will ever meet in your entire life. He gives off that little vibe, of course, that he's smarter than everyone else. Because, he is
smarter than everyone else.
He is smart. He is well-read. There's nothing can go past that guy. But with all of that, he's actually he is a very selfless individual. He helped me. He mentored me not long, starting before you and I had our first show together. I ended up meeting him at a David Horowitz event, and ever since then, he mentored me in my law school applications. He edited my personal statement. And he also also edited my personal statement for the JD-MPH program that I'm now a part of, and it's like and he did that out of the goodness of his own heart, and because he actually wants me to succeed, and he's completely invested in everyone who works with him and for him, because he hires people knowing that they have the capabilities of being good people who will make a huge difference in this world, no matter where they end up. It was an honor that he brought me on board, because it showed that it was a huge boost of confidence for me to say that someone like him, who has accomplished so much in such a short period of time, saw me as someone who could do good work. And and speak of the devil, he just actually emailed me about an article he wants me to write, and I'm not going to disclose that. That's for later.
That's so cool.
I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, wait a second. Let me just I know what he wants me to talk about, and it's vintage me. I'll just say that it's completely vintage me. I
can't wait. I cannot wait to read about it.
Oh,
maybe I'll tell.
Never mind. Even worse. even worse. You're not gonna like this at all.
No, tell me about. Oh shit! Yeah, no. You see. You know, this is another. This is the left. They're gonna be like, you see, he didn't get anything done, and they're like blocking him every step of the way. You know, like it's. You see, we were right. He's an impotent president. He didn't get anything done. Ugh. Makes me so mad. But that's so cool, man, that you're doing all those really righteous things. Honestly, you know what, too? Like, this is something that I would expect. You know, like you said, you wouldn't expect that the guy would be super selfless and stuff like that. But one thing that I would expect is that he would cultivate members of his business and members of his enterprise for the purpose, you know, not just because he knows it's good for business, but also because he knows he knows you're ready to do good in the world. He knows that you are smart, you're a brilliant guy, and that you have the freaking chutzpah to go out there and actually, you know, bring truth to power and make a change. And, you know, the fact that he brought you on to his operation, I think it's a big vote of confidence, and you should be very proud of yourself, man.
And I am, and I thank you again for also believing in me as well, because I think when we first spoke, I was just graduating college, and it was one of those I was at that weird stage where, like, I knew where I was going. I was going to work for Charles Jacobs and Americans for Peace and Tolerance, and I knew I was going to go to law school eventually, but it was like one of those things where I still was trying to figure out where I stand in this world, and I have it's a lot clearer for me as to where I belong.
I honestly cannot wait to see what happens. I'm sitting here with bated breath, just waiting to see how this all plays out, to be honest.
The left should be scared, because I'm not going away. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not. If the left continues its antics, and if the left continues to oppress my people and the people in this country that want to live free or die, I'm sorry, but you're going to get your ass kicked. And I can hit you verbally. I can hit you. It doesn't matter which way it's going to go. I'm going to make sure that your ideas get destroyed in the free exchange of ideas. There's no way around that for me.
There's absolutely no way around it. Elliott Hamiliton, the Fighting Jew Hamiliton, back with us. I just want to thank you again so much for coming on the show. We're going to definitely have you back again soon. We go too long before we get together and do these things, and then so much happens. It's like, wow, where do we start and where do we end? How do we figure out what to talk about? Because, you know, I mean, there's just such a breadth of information out there that we need to dissect, and we need to help our listeners understand. And thanks again for coming back. We're definitely going to have you back on soon.
Oh, don't worry, I will.
And you can get him at Elliott R. Hams on Twitter, and you can also find all of his articles on Daily Wire. That's dailywire.com. And to all you folks out there, stay tuned for a little bit of hilarity. And Elliott, thank you, and I'll see you soon.
Of course, thank you.
Okay, comrades, simmer down. We've got a lot to go through today. It's only going to be a couple days until Ann Coulter shows up at Berkeley to spew her fascism, and we are going to give her a good old Antifa welcome. When you walked in, you should have gotten a piece of paper with a recommended list of things that you're going to need while going to our local events. Remember, we are all about free speech, but free speech has its limits. You can't say things that are going to hurt other people's feelings. That's fascism, and that should be against the law. And if the cops are not going to protect us from this awful, terrible speech that hurts our feelings, then we have to defend ourselves. So make sure you bring your glass bottles, knives, brass knuckles, and anything that you could possibly use as a projectile to throw at these awful, terrible, disgusting, nasty people. We stand against hate in all of its forms, and we will not stand for hatred in our community. Remember, anytime you're going to fight fascism, you need your strength. You need your energy. So always remember, stock up on chips, lollipops, but remember, no crackers and no milk. Nothing that represents white supremacy or toxic male whiteness. Also, whenever you're fighting capitalism, you need that extra push. You need to bring your energy drinks, Rockstar, Monster, but no Red Bull. No Red Bull at all. We do not want to be insensitive to our Native American comrades, and the worst thing you can do to a Native American is to drink Red Bull, because that's cultural appropriation. What we do is we fight capitalism and white supremacy by going to the grocery store, and instead of choosing to buy Red Bull, we choose to buy Monster and we choose to buy Rockstar. That is how an Antifa fights capitalism and white supremacy. Of course, you can't forget your bear mace. Bear mace is absolutely recommended just in case you see any Trump supporters or any free speech advocates talking to the press. If you see someone talking to a camera, reach out from the crowd and mace the bitch. And remember, this is very, very important. Only target white people during the protest. We don't want to target any people of color. And if a fascist retaliates or even gets close to you, remember, drop to the floor, yell rape, cry, or anything that will look good on camera. You could become a celebrity. And if for any reason you run out of weapons, look for rocks, bricks, or street signs to kick down. You have to remember this. These fascists don't even believe in man-made global warming. So what you need to do is you need to kick down a garbage can, take out the empty bottles, take out some bagels, take out some wads of paper, and throw it at them, okay? They need to understand that environmentalism is an important thing, and if we need to litter in order to show them that, then so be it. Climate change deniers might as well be rapists and murderers, so we need to show these people what Antifa does with rapists and murderers. You know what we do? We fuck them in the ass without their permission, and then we kill them. It's the Antifa way. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to one of our biggest supporters, Berkeley's mayor, Jesse Arulwin. Okay, man. Thank you so much, Antifa Berkeley, for participating in this fine event. We are going to make sure that Berkeley is always a sanctuary city and make sure that we are all friendly towards the Antifa movement. I want to offer a reward to anyone who gets a shot at Gavin McInnes. Gavin McInnes is the founder of the Proud Boys, and they are our biggest threat to Antifa movement. These fascist Proud Boys are causing lots of problems for us here in Berkeley. Okay, we cannot tolerate that. And nothing would make me happier than to see that Gavin McInnes be punched in his stupid face. Okay, man, it's time to go kill some Nazis. Well, I'll say thank goodness that Donald Trump done legalized white supremacy. Ever since I joined the force, I've been dreaming of the day I could put the hurt on them racial and social minorities.
Yeah, I hear you. I done opened up a hefty can of whoop ass on 4 of them faggots just yesterday.
Haha, for what?
Nothing. They were just acting all gay and stuff. Those pants were so tight I could see his religion.
Well, what do we have here?
Well, God has just blessed us with a runaway negra. I do believe that man is driving while black.
Well, come on, Billy Joe, let's get him.
Put your hands outside the window, boy. Don't make me tell you twice now. Have your license and registration ready. Turn that music down, boy.
Can I help you, officer?
Wait a minute, you ain't no name. You know why I pulled you over?
This nigga, of course I do, man.
I'm driving while black. You see a black man driving down the road, and you think you can just pull him over without no due process and no judge and jury and taking away his constitutional rights, man?
Yes, but, no. We mistook you for, a jigaboo, okay? The law says you can't be driving while black, and you are clearly not a black man, so you're free to go.
What you talking about, man? I am black. Everybody know the black and the berry, the sweet and the juice, and I'm as black as they come.
Now that institutional racism is the law of the land, I could get in trouble for beating up on a white boy.
Man, pick up that baton, beat me till I'm dead, or I'm gonna sue the city for discrimination.
False alarm, Billy Ray. It's just Sean King again.
My, that boy's about as confused as a fart in a fan factory.
If you're tired of being that lame white guy in your brand new group of brothers, you need Rosetta Stone Ebonics Translator. End confusion and miscommunication between you and your homies. Translate common phrases like
They done partied and is going to the crib.
which in English means
They finished partying and are now going home.
you can translate simple phrases like
She drinking milk even though she be drinking Coke.
which in English means
She is drinking milk even though she usually drinks Coke.
even complex phrases can't stump the Rosetta Stone Ebonics Translator,
They didn't do nothing about nobody having no money or nothing like that.
which in English means
They didn't help anyone who has no money.
the Rosetta Stone Ebonics Translator can even help you cap a sack in the hood,
I'm fitting to get a blunt.
which in English means
I am going to the convenience store to purchase a cheap cigar out of which I will smoke marijuana.
and with a little bit of practice, you'll impress all of your black friends with your fluent Ebonics. Trust me, they'll love it. Pre-order Rosetta Stone Ebonics Translator by calling 1-800-I'm-STONED. That's 1-800-I'm-STONED. Are you a proud social justice warrior? Do you believe that the so-called facts of reality are nothing more than racist, irrelevant social constructs perpetuated by white supremacy? If you answered yes to both of these questions, you must boycott the disgruntled millennial. The disgruntled millennial threatens the very existence of humanity. He espouses dangerous ideas like small government, school choice, property rights, and worst of all, he shoots guns. He's practically Hitler. You must act now. Conservatives are becoming more and more emboldened to make their own life decisions. We can't let that happen. So whether you're drawing on coloring books in your safe space or setting police cars on fire, always remember to hashtag boycott the DM. That's boycott the DM. Boycott the DM. Boycotts work. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Brett Siegel, the Disgruntled Millennial. You can get me on Facebook at the Disgruntled Millennial. You can get me on SoundCloud at the Disgruntled Millennial, YouTube, the Disgruntled Millennial, or Twitter at Shaq General. I also have a Patreon page if you want to donate to keep some of these videos coming. It would really, really help us out.